We'll start. We're still waiting for a few people to come in. So no problem multitasking, though make sure you're listening, and because Vaughn is somebody who I really admire, and he knows a lot about this business from the other side than I was in. He knows a lot about the advertising business, and we met to talk about his business and how it would intersect with Covey. But what I thought was, he's just so knowledgeable that I thought it would be fun to have him talk to us about not only about what he set up coming from corporate life, but how he did it. And just before you all came on, he was going through with me the cost of what he set up for. And now I'm totally mortified that, like, he did it on a string and I thought I was doing it on a string because I had to. And he really did it on a string. So there's real information here for all of you. And especially for those of you who are saying, I can't throw a lot of money at my reinvention. What do I do? So let me give you, first of all, as everybody's signing in, just so we get an idea of who's in the room and Vaughn can get an idea. Why don't you just type in what business you are coming from and where are you headed? Just so he can understand where you all are coming from. Hi, Jenny, glad to see you. Got a good group today. So here's, let me turn off my alarm. Okay, it keeps snoozing. Hold on 1 second. 1 second, let me get this off. Why is that there? Okay, so this is Vaughn. Vaughn Emsley is the co-founder of Flipside, a startup ad agency dedicated to flipping marketers' perceptions of men and women 50 plus. With nearly 40 years in advertising and marketing with companies like Saatchi & Saatchi, and working in nearly every part of the world, he might just be getting the hang of it. So I thought, Vaughn, say hello. Can everybody see Vaughn there?
I'm in the light.
Can you see him? Some people are still coming in. Okay, so Karen says she's multitasking. Kathleen says she's writing and editing for corporate marketing. Jenny says she's a Northern California attorney starting training programs for recent law grads. Mindy is marketing, strategy, and execution for small businesses. Andrea says she's an independent media strategist, planner, buyer. She's been on her own for a long time. Want to continue doing the same thing, but looking for clients who will appreciate working with someone independent and who cares. Deborah Burns says she's already transformed from media to author and now to corporate speaker. Paula says from law to a lifestyle website for women over 40 called Finer Things. And same as Andrea, says Mindy. And Deb says New York launch coach for new women entrepreneurs, left corporate 8 years ago. All right, Mr. Vaughn. And if you guys have questions, we're a small group today, so you can either pop your question into the chat box as we go, or you can just say me and we'll call on you and just you can talk right out there.
Great. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. And I have a tendency when I get excited, by the way, to talk very quickly, which with my accents can sometimes confuse people. So if I'm going too fast, just put up a hand and say, slow down. I was on a video conference yesterday with someone who was British, and it's a long time actually since I've worked with British people, and I realized how sometimes when we speak quickly, people can't understand what we're saying. So I'm happy to slow down. This is really an hour or so on my experience, and it's a story not of perfection at all. It's about things which I wish I'd known before I started. Some of them I did know, some of them I didn't know. Some of them were good experiences, some of them were not good experiences, but I've come out of the past 2 or 3 years having had 2 ventures with, I hope, some general guidelines which anyone setting up in business on their own would find useful to know before they get going. And these are all basically kitchen sink experiences. This is not a hugely sophisticated Harvard MBA presentation. This is a story of an experience, and I hope that it's of practical use to people as a result. I should explain, Flipside is a marketing and advertising consultancy, which my partner, Chris Foster, and I officially launched 3 months ago, or 2 months ago. And our objective is to persuade marketers to start focusing on consumers over 50. Why? Because that's where all the money is. And at the moment...
Finally, somebody who understands. This is where Vaughn and I connected.
One of the most remarkable misdirects in American capitalism is that 85% of marketing dollars are spent on the people with 20% of the money. And about 7% of marketing dollars are spent on people with 80% of the money. So we hope to persuade clients to set that right. And increasingly in the current environment, that's even more the case. We've just started. We don't know whether it's going to work or not, but we're very hopeful. So that's a little bit of background about the talk and my business. And the subject was about starting off life on your own. And I wanted to start out by saying, why consider setting up on your own? Because I know there are a lot of people in the corporate world and they're wondering if they should make the jump. And by way of an inspirational quote, I have here a quote from Diana Vreeland. She said, "The best life is the one you choose and make your own." Now, Diana Vreeland was a successful woman in business before there were successful women in business. She was editor of Harper's for, I think, 30 years. And then in 1963 became editor of Vogue, which she edited for 7 years. The irony of the quote is that she didn't make her life her own because she was brutally pushed out of Vogue magazine with no notice. And she found herself on the outside. So she went from being the most powerful woman in publishing, I think, to being completely on the fringe. Despite her power, she was not in control of her own destiny. And I think that if I've learned, and I went through a similar experience, by the way, because I was in the corporate world. I worked at Saatchi & Saatchi for 30 years, which is almost unheard of in the advertising business. And I was running a major global account, the largest single piece of advertising in the world, the Procter & Gamble account, which had a revenue of $200 million. I had a heart attack on May the 7th, 2013, so I couldn't really go back to flying all over the world. And I then discovered that despite all that I'd done, I was not employable. The view was, I was told by a headhunter, we're not looking for people with your profile. Well, that was something of a shock. So I decided that if they weren't looking for people of my profile, I might as well create something of my own. And the one important thing to recognize in this is, at the moment, for now, ageism is an immovable fact. And we've seen a lot of articles about this, but one of the major issues right now in addressing ageism in employment is that employers are concerned mostly with Me Too. Second of all, with Black Lives Matter. So ageism is like the third thing which they're going to get to. And there is an economic disincentive to address ageism because older employees are more expensive. So you can...
That's true. Vaughn, can I interrupt you? Is that true, or that's what they think? Are there numbers supporting that?
Well, people with experience tend to be more expensive.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you were talking about in terms of getting...
And so they can address Me Too and Black Lives Matter without increasing costs dramatically. If you keep experienced people on, that costs you more than hiring junior people. So I think that there are some businesses that are looking at employing a range of people based on age, but most are not. And I think my experience, I was only 54 when it happened, 55, no, 54, just 54. My experience is that most businesses are not looking to keep people beyond their mid-50s. And that's why going it alone is important. And, you know, if you've been in the corporate world for a long time, you realize that you haven't always been able to do what you thought you were able to do. So you weren't always able to set your own rules, your own goals, and set your own schedule. And one of the liberating things about being independent and getting out of the corporate world, I have found, is I'm able to do all these things. And the other important thing, which I didn't put on the schedule, but I went for I had a little bit of a scare recently, and I went to the emergency room, and I was talking to this guy who'd had stents put in his heart about 3 months ago. And he was working in the hotel business, and he totally hates it. And I said, listen, the key to being content is getting jerks out of your life. So one of the advantages of working for yourself is you don't have to work with a load of poisonous people who don't make contributions that are helpful. You can make your own rules, and you can walk away. The strength of being able to walk away, I think, is very important. And happiness, really, because this is what it's about, happiness in my mind comes from taking control. If you're in control, you're happy. And when you're not in control, you're not happy. I feel in control of things now much more than when I was in the corporate world. I'm pulling in probably a fifth of what I was earning then, by the way. Maybe that's why they didn't want to keep me. But I've never been happier than I am now, because I only really deal with people I want to deal with and do things I want to do. And that's part, I think, of the stage of life we're at. We call it, at Flipside, when you're in your 50s and 60s, the second coming of age. It's like being a teenager again, but with money and experience. You realize you don't really want to deal with people that you don't want to deal with. And I think the strength of being independent is, even if it means you lose income, you're much happier in yourself. At least that's been my experience. Now, the question is, if you're going to do this, when should you start planning for it? And I didn't start planning for it, and I wish in retrospect I had started planning to go independent early, because I wasn't anticipating a heart attack and I wasn't anticipating losing my job. And the most important thing is, it's never too early to stockpile cash. So the time to start thinking about going independent, and this may be something of a horses bolted comment for this group, but is, I think now, from my experience, I should have started thinking about this 5 years before I embarked on the journey. We have managed to launch Flipside with moderate expenditure, but I would have preferred to have more readily available cash over the past 18 months. It would have made life a little bit easier. And depending on how much infrastructure you have to build, we didn't have to build very much. Not having enough cash can be an issue. And you have to have enough financial security to do what's right. So you don't take on business you don't want. You don't take on accounts that don't pay. Again, you're free to walk away and make your own judgment. So if you're working and you're a ways from, being pushed out, the time to start retrenching is now. It's, go on one vacation a year, not 3, move to a smaller house, cut back on the car, get a smaller car. And I think also make investments which you can access without a huge amount of penalties. So a lot of people are heavily invested in 401ks. The problem is, if you dive into that in your 50s, there are penalties and taxes to be paid. If you have money that you can put into funds which just pay capital gains tax, that's a much better position to be in. So financial preparation is very important. And also, it just helps you relax if you know you've got money to fall back on. If you're worried about where the money's going to come from, it's not as enjoyable an experience. Now, having said that, there are ways of launching a business without spending a fortune. So between us, Chris Foster and myself, probably between us planning to do this and launching 6 months ago, we haven't spent more than $25,000. So you don't need $1 million, you don't need $500,000, you don't need $100,000. $25,000 was what we had, and that's covered our journalist fees, our accountants, our lawyers, our website, our outreach on LinkedIn, some travel, and so on. So it is possible by economizing, by seeking favors from friends. We got a lot of favors from friends to keep your costs low at the beginning. But it's important to at least have some degree of financial security so that if you have no income coming in, it's not a major worry.
And can I interrupt, Vaughn? When do you think people should start putting away money? It sounds like you're saying like at age 50, they should start a little fund.
I wish I had started at 49.
49, okay. So just as you approach 50, okay.
Yeah. And I wish I had stopped spending on things that I didn't want anymore. Because you think, well, this is going to carry on forever, and you turn around when it stops and said, I bought all this stuff. What was I doing buying all this stuff? So I guess the other part, really think about what you really need, I think. The other thing I would say is be predictive. So if you're starting early, plan for where the market will be, not where it is today, because you want to anticipate where the market is going. So we could have launched, Chris and I could have launched another advertising agency. In fact, my first project was exactly that. But that was for the status quo. We're launching Flipside because we think over the next 4 to 5 years, there will be a recognition of the importance of the 50 plus consumer, and there's almost no one else in the field. So to the extent that you can spot an opportunity before anybody else can, that's also, a great advantage. And Sonsoles Gonzalez, who I think gave a talk to you a few weeks ago with Better Not Younger, has seen exactly that. Where is the market for hair care for women over 40? If no one is doing it, there's going to be increasing demand. She's getting in ahead of everybody else. And I think she's going to be very successful in that. The next point is, well, what is it that you're selling? If you're thinking of creating your own business, what makes it successful? What makes it competitive? The first thing is you have to figure out who your customer is. So who do you want to take on your business? What's their biggest pain point? What problem have they got that they really have to have solved that no one is solving for them? And I believe also, and we've discovered this the hard way, is that clients don't buy people. They tend to buy processes and systems and tools. So someone once said to me, you have to understand that clients buy knives, forks, and spoons. They don't buy strategy in the broad sense. They buy a tool to do a certain thing. So part of an offering, and we didn't do this when we were initially developing, is to develop something proprietorial that you have, which makes you stand out from the crowd, and something which delivers what most clients are interested in. The only thing they're interested in, well, actually, this is 3 things: better, cheaper, faster. That's what every client is interested in. So you can solve their problem with a process that's unique, better, cheaper, and faster than anybody else, then you're in. And then also, if you can get some proof of concept before you start, so if you can get a client to a project which you work on at cost, so you have evidence that you're not just fantasizing, that you can actually make it work. That's also important, because very few people who are buying services these days want to take any risks. So if you have some proof of concept, that I think is very important. And as I say, clients buy products, they don't buy people, and they buy certainty, and they don't buy passion. So I come from the advertising business, which is all about people and passion.
Right.
And
that changed, Vaughn? Because when we watched Mad Men, it was kind of all about people, right?
it's not about people anymore. It's about technology. And I don't really understand, to be honest with you, what it is about now. I look at it from the outside and it makes no sense to me. But what I am very clear about is the days when people would say, well, this is a wonderful person, I want to employ them. Those days are over. You have to come in with something that has got an objective, clinical feel to it. Oh, sorry. And when I talk about that, it's kind of a black box. There's a financial advantage to having a black box, because if a black box will pay more for you than an hourly rate, and it leads to subscription business. So if you have a tool or a process, ideally this should be something which is renewable. So a client is coming back to you for more of the same. So you don't go in for one job, finish and go, but you leave them with something which means they want to subscribe and get more of your consultancy and more of your advice 3 or 4 months, 6 months down the road. Because the best business you can have is repeat business. And the reason you want to have some process is it's very hard for people in procurement to figure out the real value of that. People in procurement have figured out the value of hourly rates, and they're going only one way, which is down. So one way to avoid being paid, some ridiculously small amount, is to have a tool which they can't evaluate. And that's one of the reasons why when you go to our website, we have 10 tools for clients to buy, and that's what we're going to charge for with a markup. We're going to charge relatively little on an hourly rate because that's not where the money is.
Anybody have any questions for Vaughn at this point? Because I want you guys to jump in. There'll be time at the end, obviously, as well. Anybody want to jump in with a question, or are we okay? Oh, good. Deb says this is very validating. Okay, good.
I have one thing I want to ask.
Go for it.
Going back to your original, like a paragraph ago. So I worked at Bozell, a huge agency, and did exactly what you said. I want to go out on my own, and I basically told my boss 6 months in advance. I planned for a year. I did not have a huge salary because it was in 1991. So I never had the luxury, lack of a better word, of having jobs like it seems like you maybe had, or like these huge corporate packages that I could sock all this fancy money away. But I did enough that I knew I could survive. And then I got a huge account. I was running them on my own, the largest fashion account in America. It was a great party. I still have a sign on my desk to my children: don't put all your eggs in one basket, Mom. I had other accounts. I paid for bat mitzvahs out of cash, but I never had that huge nest egg. Like, I'm 64 years old now and I still don't have much money saved. So all the stuff you're saying is great, but when that shock happens that you lose your biggest account and you never upsized enough to have enough people, it gets very complicated, so great that you had the money to begin with and you sock it away, but if you don't, it's hard to go out on your own, which I did, and I'm happy I did. But
well, I think that's why I talk about selling a process rather than an individual, because if people have locked into, for example, if you have a process which enables you to understand what the passionate views of parents about children are at any given time, a client who is marketing to families will want to know about that on a continuous basis. And they will want to give you money to develop that. So part of what I'm saying is the less you rely on yourself and the more you rely on a technique, the more chance you have of keeping revenue stable and having a range of clients. Because you're quite right, Deborah, the big issue for smaller agencies is in fact, this has happened to 2 agencies in New York very recently who have closed down, is they had 2 big advertising clients, both of whom, each one had one each, who pulled out, and that was the end of the party. Because they had an old business model, they relied on hourly rates and fees, and there was no incentive for the client to stick with them because probably somebody else had come along with a lower hourly rate, and that, believe me, is a very significant consideration for clients. So then if you're thinking of starting off on your own, who are good people to partner with? And a lot of people think, oh, I have this friend, or I've known this person for years, wouldn't it be great if we can work together? We know each other well, we like each other, it'll be great fun. Going into business with your friends is a huge mistake. I have seen that one of the companies I did consultancy with, I won't say who they are, was founded by three university friends. They'd been friends for 20 years before they started this business. They're not friends anymore.
Yeah.
Because they fell out over direction, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I formed a business before this one, Clean Up on R7, with someone I'd worked with off and on for 30 years and consistently for the past 10 or 15 years. And we were friends and went to each other's houses and everything. We had an argument over money, and things never recovered. So I think one of the things that happens if you bring friends in is you don't confront the issues properly, because you're always putting the friendship first, and you don't want to cause upset or unsettle people in any way. But I think the temptation is enormously strong to go in with friends, because it's a little bit lonely starting off on your own, and you want to be with people that you can trust. But believe me, in my experience, and the experience I've observed, it's a huge mistake. And what you should be looking for, and this is why, again, you need to start planning this in advance, because it takes time to find these people. So you need to partner with people who really share your vision of where you're going. If you're going to have a partner, you need to know that they share your vision. And it goes wrong even in big businesses. At Saatchi & Saatchi 30 years ago, there were three key players, the two brothers and Martin Sorrell. And the brothers and Martin Sorrell did not agree on the direction of Saatchi & Saatchi. The brothers were going crazy, and Sorrell was right. He walked out the door. The agency never recovered from that split. So a commonality of vision is important, and people who are willing to give themselves 100%. So you can't partner with somebody who is busy doing something else on the side. And I know people are tempted to do that because they want to keep their options open. But really, you can't get a business going of any significance unless you or two or three or four of you are really, really focused. And another interesting aspect of checking if the people are right for you is, will they put their money where their mouths are? So Chris and I were looking for a new partner in the spring, and I found someone who I thought on paper was excellent. He was excellent. He would have been good for us, and he would have brought some clients in. But he wasn't willing to put his money on the table. And if people aren't willing to put their money on the table, you have to walk away. And then the other thing is legal agreements. Sometimes people say, well, we've known each other for all these years. Do we really need to have a legal agreement? You need a good lawyer in the room. When Clean Up cleaned up and then ceased to exist, it was very important, despite the fact that I had a 30-year friendship with my partner, that we had legal agreements that ended up paying me substantial sums of money. So you may not think, because you know someone like them, that you need lawyers. You always need a lawyer. It's very, very important.
Lawyers it's like the old neighbor thing. Fences build good neighbors, lawyers build good partners.
Exactly. Now, the other thing that happens is people imagine that their friends, not as partners, but their friends in business, are going to help them get business. So they're going to do you a favor, they're going to introduce you to people and so on. My experience is that doesn't happen. That your close-in group of friends are not going to help you. That surprisingly, the best help comes from an outer circle of people. So in my past ventures, I found people who I hadn't worked with for 25 years were getting in touch and saying, I can help you with this, I can help you with that. So the value of networking widely and keeping in touch with people is very important. People who I had known very intimately for a long time were not that helpful. And sometimes they didn't even return phone calls. And why is that? Well, we're not anymore, unfortunately, in the era of personal favors. We're not in the era where businesses are tolerant of taking a risk by giving someone a break without proof, however well you know them. Decision-making in many businesses is multi-layered. So even if your friend would like to bring you in, there are 3 or 4 other people that they have to convince. Few these days will take a significant business risk to help a friend. And that's a brutal fact of life. And also, I've got to be honest with you, jealousy plays a big part. So the people who know you best, interestingly, are often much more jealous of your success than people who hardly know you. It's hard to understand that, but it's one of the brutal truths of friendship. Gore Vidal, the writer, once said, "Every time one of my friends has some success, a part of me dies." It's a rather gloomy perspective, but to be honest with you, I think it's true that we're more competitive with our friends than we like to admit, and this leads to people holding back from doing favors. So I think that here the question is, how wide is your network, and who on the periphery can really help you? And I had approaches from people I'd forgotten I even knew, who wanted to help, as I say, and people who were close in were not that helpful at all. So be wide in your circle of connections, because you never know where business is going to come from.
Why do you think that outer rim is, the outer reach is easier for them to reach in and help? Because women say, "How can I help you?" And I have gotten a lot of help.
Right. I think it's easier, and maybe this is more of a male perspective, but it's easier for people to reach in if they don't have emotional involvement.
Interesting. I wonder if it's different for women, because I have gotten a lot of, have you guys gotten a lot of help from women, or do you see it as Vaughn sees it? Does this break down along?
I think it's a male thing. I think women are much more willing to help
I agree.
each other.
Yeah.
That's
I feel
my
like-
experience.
yeah. Women, I feel like, are very much more helpful and willing.
Especially older, when you're older.
Yeah. And I would say, by the way, the outer circle that helped me, they were all women. So
Oh, really? Who wouldn't help? On the outer rim.
Hello.
so,
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
so, well, there's a principle here. Don't go talking to men. Don't ask men for help.
Well, we know that for years. We've been
Yeah.
take out the garbage.
Uh-huh.
Take out the garbage. Okay. Interesting. I think that could could break down along, and maybe things are changing for women, because the generation right above me was not helpful. They wanted you to go through everything, but I feel like my generation and below, we are, and of course, I've created CoveyClub, which is all about helping each other. And there is a group of women who do want to do that. I'm still sure there are people who don't want to, but I think there's an awareness that if we don't help each other, we are all screwed, frankly.
That's an advantage that you have over men.
Yeah.
As well, because men tend to be more competitive and less willing to share, I think.
Karen says she sees it the way you do, Juan. She said it's threatening. She said, "Not true for me that women are helpful."
Right, good.
Yeah.
The final point is, you've got your partner, you've got your money, you've got your vision, you've got your product. How to go to market? Unfortunately, there's no simple rule. Oh, the best. It's try everything is my advice to build your brand. Try third-party recommendation is very, very important. Telemarketing, I know businesses that have been built
Marketing
through telemarketing. Yes, I know, that's what I said. But they've built a successful business on telemarketing. These tend to be more technology-based businesses, but a lot of it depends on who you choose to make the phone calls and how well targeted it is. But I know businesses that have been very successful with telemarketing. LinkedIn on outreach, we're trying a major push on LinkedIn ourselves right now. Public relations, online advertising. Different things work for different businesses. Some are successful just publishing opinion pieces on LinkedIn, and this generates interest in them and generates business for them. A lot of the AI companies work that way. They get most of their publicity through publishing articles on LinkedIn. So there is no, I don't think there's any given program. Right? I think it's important to experiment with everything. And on the PR side, I would say, I would advise you to find a journalist, not a PR agency, but a journalist who has good connections and who you only pay by results. So when I launched Cleanup, we used a PR agency and we paid them $11,000 and nothing happened. Now we use a journalist and we pay him only on the basis of articles that appear. So we pay him $1,500 or whatever it is, if the article appears, and if it doesn't appear, we don't pay him anything.
Wow.
And that has kept our costs really low. And that's what I mean by PR. It's finding a journalist with connections who can get stories placed for you in an impactful way. And through that, we got stories in Scientific American, USA Today, Newsweek, lots of publications. Harvard Business Review we were in also. I like to say I was in Harvard Business Review. I didn't write the article. It was very small, but it was good for the ego.
Cool. Can you talk a little bit, Vaughn? Deb's says she's hearing engaging and building relationships and direct messaging is what's working for most coaches and consultants now, labor intensive but high return. Have you heard any of that?
Yes, certainly. That I think that could also be working as well. I mean, I think no one quite knows what the best route is, and a lot of these are inexpensive. In LinkedIn outreach is extremely inexpensive.
Can you explain that a little bit? Because I didn't know what that was, and I know you're in the process.
So we're in the middle of this right now, and there are lots of companies that approach you to say, how do you generate more business leads? And for a long time, I ignored them. And then I took a call from one of them. And we're reaching out on LinkedIn. We have a list of 10,000 people who are senior marketing or financial people or CEOs of companies. And we're reaching them with 3 or 4 messages about Flipside over the course of a month. And the program is 3 months. And so we hope from that to generate leads. It's early days yet. It's $800 a month, so the total is $2,400. We don't know if it's going to work for us right now. We haven't had anybody say no. Sorry, we've had so far 12 people say no. We haven't had anybody say yes. But I'm confident that it's going to shake something out of the tree. And if nothing else, it's improved our footprint on LinkedIn because we're getting an extra 300 or 400 contacts a week, which over the course of 3 months is whatever 12 times 4 is, 4,800 or something like that. So LinkedIn, we think might be quite good for us. I know of companies that have been very successful with telemarketing, online advertising. And the other part I would say is opinion pieces on LinkedIn. So the couple of AI companies, Quilt and Discover AI, have built most of their business through timely articles in LinkedIn in people's feeds. How it works technically, I'm not sure. But as I say, there's try everything you can to grow the business because you'll find something. I have found that different people have had different rates of success with different things. Now, and that's because what you haven't got is a sales force. You haven't got people who can spend their time phoning around. And I would say for every 100 connections, 1 or 2 will turn into revenue. And those connections will probably involve 6 different contact points. So it's a long haul pulling in business. It requires a lot of resilience. And you can get a little downcast if it's not working, but you need to keep pressing on. So,
Cindy's asking, when you say by reaching them, do you mean direct messages through LinkedIn when you say?
No, I think personal contacts. So once someone has,
because I had never heard this before.
So once someone has got in touch with you, and because many years ago, I was a new business director at Young Redesigning. Once someone has got in touch with you as a real human being in a real way, it may take 5 or 6 further meetings with them before that turns into real revenue. That's what I'm saying. So getting to a point of personal contact is only the first hurdle. it's a long time before that necessarily converts into real money. Is that make sense to you?
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just asking if it was more like basically cold calling, cold emailing, kind of, if that's what you.
Well, I think cold emailing. I haven't put that on here because I haven't heard of anyone who's had great success with it.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I haven't either. And so that's what I was wondering, if that's what you meant by that.
With LinkedIn, the advantage of the LinkedIn process is you can have a number of different connections with people.
Mm-hmm.
They're very innocuous at the beginning, right? Please talk to me, or please get in touch with me, and they get a little bit more pressured as time goes on. Emailing, because so few people open emails that don't come from people they know.
Mm-hmm.
I think the click-through rate is about 0.5%.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's extremely low. So you have to send a lot of emails out for it to connect. But the point I'm making here is, once you've got a human being to talk to, because all these things here will get you as a human being to talk to, it may still take 5 or 6 meetings or conversations before that converts into something real. So it's you have to be very, very, very patient.
And telemarketing, who does that work for, Vaughn? I'm just shocked that you say that works. And is that, are those bots, or are those?
No, they're real people. And it depends on 2 things. It depends on what you have to sell and how easy it is to summarize what you're selling in a soundbite. And then it requires you to have a really good person who's making the calls. So I have found, I haven't used her, but she was highly recommended to me, an English woman who lives in the middle of nowhere in England. And she has a tremendous track record, because talking to people is her pleasure in life. And she's very engaging on the phone, and she builds relationships with people. And she will limit the number of calls that she will make, because she doesn't deal in volume, she deals in quality. And finding the right person in telemarketing is critical. And that's why I totally understand your reaction to say telemarketing. But if you find the right person who knows how to create a relationship with the PA on the phone, then that's worth a lot. But the trick is finding, because a lot of telemarketing companies charge you a fortune for the list, and then they just robocall essentially out with someone from Bangalore. Well, that's no use. You need someone who can talk about the weather and talk off script and be very human and all that kind of thing. So people feel obliged to take the call when it comes through the second time. If anyone's interested in doing that, he's about $9,000 a quarter. So you could buy his services for $9,000 for 3 months.
Deb says she knows something called a new job role called social sellers. Deb, what is that?
That's people who will engage in conversation in the direct messaging feed. Like someone comments on your post on LinkedIn or likes your post. I think social sellers act as you. So it would be as if Deb Boulanger was having a conversation with you and say, hey, thanks so much for your comment on our post. How did that apply to you? And they engage in the conversation. And then at the right point, they bring you in to have the conversation.
It's like a digital telemarketer in a way.
Yeah, it's telemarketing in the direct message feed.
Interesting.
And that's
I just learned about it.
Yeah, that I hadn't heard of that, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But if people have hit like, or if they commented, then clearly this is an area of interest for them. It depends. What you have to be sure of is the person who's making the calls knows whether or not the person is worth calling, because you don't want to pay for a load of calls to people who can't give you any business. And certainly I find most of the people who react to my posts on LinkedIn are people I know already. So they're not strangers, unfortunately. But I think, again, I think it's worth trying anything. Many of these techniques are really inexpensive. You don't have to spend $500,000 marketing yourself. And on the PR point, I do emphasize, don't hire a PR agency and pay fees on a monthly basis. There's no guarantee of return. Anything will happen. Find a journalist who knows other journalists who can pitch your story and get you coverage.
And
So,
are they open about that? Are they being open with the sources, you know, the places they're pitching, that they are being paid? Because I wonder if they're not being open.
well, no, I think they're open. And the thing now is that so many publications are desperate for free content.
Oh, okay.
That they don't really care, because their permanent staff is so small,
Right.
and they're happy to take. I mean, the whole Huffington Post model is based on free content,
right.
And so they're happy to take stuff. They're not going to ask who paid who if it's free. But we found that I was amazed at how much we got published, but
Okay.
it's all down to the connections the person has.
Okay.
And how well they can pitch your story. Because a journalist knows what another journalist is looking for, what an editor is looking for. A PR person doesn't necessarily
Right.
know that. So that's the point. So final thing, you're probably going to be working from home. So this sounds trivial, but it's very important. Minimize distractions. I have a cat who miraculously did not intervene in this conversation. Normally, if I'm on the video for more than an hour, she does. So send the cat to the mother, get a dog walker. You can't be going out the door 5 times a day walking the dog. Get the children out of sight. They're a distraction. And be sure your husband can cook, because you don't want to spend any time in the kitchen. In other words, it's got to be all about you for the first year. And you can't be diverted or distracted by anything else. And so, as I say, this is not a Harvard Business Review presentation with lots of charts and models and so on. It really is recounting my experience over the past 3 or 4 years, having gone abruptly and unexpectedly from the corporate world into being independent. But I hope that these principles or thoughts are helpful as people set off on their own journey.
Do you guys have any questions for Vaughn?
Hi, Lesley.
I do.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Deborah, and then we'll have Paul.
Okay, sure. I don't know if I have a question as much as a statement through you, Lesley. I'm one of the volunteers who helped Vaughn get some insights for, I'm assuming, potential clients of yours. And I did it because I always live in pay it forward mode. And I'm launching a new venture, and he sounded interesting, and it sounded like it would be a valuable conversation all around. But I went in with no expectations or low expectations, and I found through talking to Vaughn and his partner and their questions that they're launching something meaningful in a way because of their background, has a chance, unlike some of the other 50 plus thought leaders, has a chance of really making a difference. And so this is just more of a statement in support of what Vaughn is doing, because each of us on the phone has a great background, perspective, level of experience, and we all can bring something to bear for what he's doing. Right. And I'm just encouraging other people who are on the call who may not have responded to that missive of yours to actually weigh in with his clients, because it's fascinating, meaningful, and may lead to something that we're all searching for. So no questions for you, Vaughn, because we've already had a talk, but just a statement of support.
Well, thank you for that. And obviously I agree with everything you said, but thank you for participating in the interview. And we're finding it, Jackie and I, fascinating. She spent a lifetime in the beauty and fashion industry. I had worked on Olay for a while, but I'm not really an expert. But the direction from all of you is so clear on that. It would be very easy for us to develop a story for publicity in the magazines and in newspapers, and to go to manufacturers and say, look, there are 10 things. If you did these 10 things today, people over 50 would be buying your products. I'm delighted that we've been speaking to CoveyClub members, because it's given us a lot of simple things to work with.
What it was, for those of you who don't know, is Vaughn was looking for people to dig deep with about what the issues were for women 50 plus, and a bunch of you signed up and did the interviews, and they were very helpful to him getting, actual information. And hopefully Covey expects then that, we have our Covey curators, and if you guys haven't signed up for Covey curators, you should. But our Covey curators are the people that, when Vaughn has clients, they will come back and do studies and surveys, and hopefully we can have input and help them.
Yeah, and the idea of this is also to help raise the profile of CoveyClub, because if we talk to, should we enter a meeting with the great Anna Wintour to talk about this?
Hi, old boss.
I don't want to participate. I retreat in that case.
I get PTSD if I have to go there.
We will say, well, our powerhouse is CoveyClub. You should be talking to them more, Anna. Why don't you go and understand how?
You can just send her my way. Anna, you know that woman you loved who used to write your editor's letters for you? She knows me. But yeah, that's really fantastic. Vaughn, one question that we didn't get to earlier. Can you explain a little bit more about the black box, and like, what are you actually putting out there that is, so you're saying that's proprietary tech? Is that what you're saying?
Some of it's smoke and mirrors. I mean, a lot of stuff is smoke and mirrors. But I would say that if, for example, you're in the research business, you need to have a tool which a client couldn't create themselves, and which nobody else has, which can tell them something nobody else knows. Now, how things work within that tool needs to remain a mystery, because that's the mystery. It could just be that you're interviewing 10 people with flashcards, or it could be that you have a whole AI machinery behind you, which is much more expensive. But the person I was talking to you about, who does knives, forks, and spoons, he has this incredibly magnetic tool. When he took me through it, I thought, well, this is really old-fashioned type of research. There's nothing new or technically sophisticated about it. But people are buying this because it's like a sausage machine. You put their brand in one end, and it comes out with an answer at the other. And they can't do that in their own companies. And why that's important is what they're paying for on a regular, because you want to go back every year to find out what's going on. They're paying a regular subscription. It's like a magazine subscription. So instead of paying this guy for one presentation and 10 hours of work, they're paying thousands of dollars a year. And once you've got machinery up and running, it's relatively easy to keep it running. And so you have a massive upcharge for what you've created. There's a lot in the area of AI that's interesting, social listening and so on, which provides a lot of insight. And there are small players in that area, and you can go to them and Maria.
Oh, that's great. When someone starts to drill outside your window next, you just
well, yes. Yesterday, I had not coordinated one of the interviews with the New York City Council because they started digging up the street outside the immediate minute we started. But for example, in the world of AI, there are small players who you can connect with who do very good social listening, and you can put together something that looks like a proprietary tool. Which could be something else that's repackaged. There's a lot of as I say, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in this. It could be very expensive or it could be inexpensive. But it's, I think, important to have. So for example, we're talking about a tool to help identify images that 50 plus people really like. Another one on language. We're talking about a tool to help identify where the commonalities are between people over 50 and people under 50. The clients don't have to change what they're doing. How we make those work, the clients don't need to know. But we've realized we have to have something like that because they're just not going to buy Chris and me because of our experience.
Paula, did you have a question we didn't get to?
Yes, sure. I wanted to know, tell us more about your business, the services you're offering, and how you would work with members of Covey that are starting their own businesses.
Right. Well, we're offering 3 types of answers to clients who want to reach people over 50, right? And there are going to be 3 different types. There are those who have to come up with different products and services for the 50 plus market, right? Then there are going to be those who need answers to the question of how do I bring 50 plus consumers into my current strategy and position? How do I don't want to change everything, but how do I bring the 50 plus users? So if, for example, I'm a car manufacturer and I have a strategy of safety, how do I make that meaningful, not only to people with young children, but to people over 50? I don't want to change strategy. I want to bring them in. And the third group, which may be a lot of where we start, is how do I stop pissing off people over 50 by insulting them in all my communication without realizing that I'm doing it, right? Of which there is a lot. And we don't know the level of commitment that different clients will make. I should have said earlier, one of the most important things is to make your offering easy to buy. So the less threatening it is to the status quo, oftentimes the easier it is for someone to buy. So we suspect a lot of our early clients will be, well, we didn't know we were upsetting people over 50. Show us how to stop doing that. And that's relatively easy for them to do.
Lower barrier.
Yeah, they could just get rid of some patronizing images of people over 50 who don't know how to use computers. That would be a start, right? So there are all kinds of things that they can do that are simple and executional. But then it gets progressively more complicated. The most complicated is, you need a different product for people over 50. That's harder for people to buy into. Skincare, we might be able to do it. But I think where there's a lot of opportunity is in travel. For example, intergenerational, I think there's a huge market now for intergenerational travel. So with travel, it's all young people or cruises to Alaska with people over 80, right? There's nothing in, actually, it's the fact of being between 50 and 70, there's nothing in between, right? But there's a lot, for example, in the area of travel, of intergenerational travel. If you want to take your children, if you're a young married couple.
Grandchildren. Take
Yeah,
your grandchildren.
you can't, if you're a young married couple, you can't afford to go to Disney. It's too expensive. So you have to bring your parents with you. And so there's a whole area of, if I was Airbnb, I would be advertising about family vacations, grandparents, parents and grandchildren all traveling together. I wouldn't be advertising about some 19-year-old Generation Z person who's off.
It's 11 o'clock.
Well, there's our time for my lovely computer, which keeps time. So Vaughn, because I know some people have to go, I want to give Vaughn a big hand. Thank you so much. That was really interesting. And we will put Vaughn's email in the chat box there. So if you guys want to reach out to him and hear more or talk to him. And as always, and I've also wrote Vaughn in for later on because there is a lot that he knows about the history of sexist imagery and all the sort of sexism and ageism that we see coming out of advertising long ago and sticking to us. And I thought that would be a really interesting conversation because I didn't know that. I feel like I'm pretty educated in many ways, but I didn't realize a lot of that comes from there. So I've roped him in. That'll be sometime in the fall. And then I just want to tell you guys, Mondays, if you haven't come, I know some of you are new, come to our Positive Mornings, which is our Best Love event. And that is 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 10. You get a cool tool from our reinvention coaches, Wendy and Dana. And it's really quite great. It's about 55 people, and people really share deeply. It's a really great way to get your morning going. And now we are giving away special travel kits from Codex Beauty, which is really a great little thing to have at the end. We have we spin our spinner and people get to win. And then on September 9th, which is that Wednesday, we have How to Create a 5-Star Resume and Make Yourself Shine, and that's with Linda Spiegel. She's a job search coach and resume writer, and we're going to talk all about what a new resume looks like. And then we have Barbara Waxman, who wrote the book about middlescence, and that is on Tuesday. We're now moving into September. And the reason why is we're going to take a little break. We're going to actually be off for the last 2 weeks of August and take a vacation, and a staycation, I guess. But just so you know, she's coming to talk about a new way to look at this most exciting part of life. And she's the person who coined that word middlescence, which is about the new adolescence coming. And that might be good for you too, Vaughn. And then a really good one in September, September 16th, is Post-Pandemic, The Kids Are Not Okay. What you need to know and watch for your children's and your own mental health. And this is with Paula Prentice, who is a social worker and a licensed wellness coach as well. And she's studied the whole family, and she's got a whole program and discussion about, you know, when we come out of this, there's going to be a lot of things we all need to be aware of, and with our kids and with ourselves. So anyway, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for spending the time. And do we have Vaughn's number in there? Marissa, can you put, or?
And if people want a copy of the presentation,
Yes.
Provide it.
You'll get a copy of that. The video, you'll get a copy. And Vaughn, what is your email that I should put in here?
Put in
Oh, there it is. Marissa did it. She did. Oh, she put in the, no, okay, there it is. You're in. Never mind.
Just a bit of self-promotion. I hope on Monday, it's not guaranteed, there'll be an article from me on in USA Today. I hope. They've said they'll take it, but you know what it's like, Lesley. on how older consumers are wrongly portrayed in advertising. So
Yeah.
look out for that.
Great.
I'll confirm if it's appearing, but they said yes, but you know what can happen.
Yep.
So.
We'll look for it. If we see it, we'll share.
Right.
Oh, Paula's asking, do you have a newsletter?
We do not. No, we do not. We have our website on which we publish all our news, but we don't have a regular newsletter that we send out.
All right, I have a feeling a newsletter's in your future, Vaughn.
Yeah.
Take care. Thank you all. Thanks so much for coming.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Vaughn.